about this quarter or next quarter. We want to go further out into the future. And we've divided today's presentation into 3 parts. The first of which, we're going to go macro. What does it take to convert Earth to sustainable energy generation and use? The second, we want to talk about Tesla's contribution to that global need. And we're going to go function by function through the company, and you'll meet our entire leadership team, and we're going to get into the details of what those teams are doing as part of the broader goal. And then in the third part, we're going to bring it back up and talk about what this all means.
Some of this I'm going to elaborate because there's a very wide range of technical expertise out there, from people who are like, whatever, level 9 wizards in the subject, to people who do not do engineering at all. So if you have a gasoline car, you're converting less than a third, often maybe only 25% of the energy in the gasoline is converted into motion. The rest is turned into waste heat. That doesn't do any good at all. And there's a lot of energy required even to get the oil out of the ground, to refine the oil, and to transport the gasoline to the gas station. So when you look at all that, for a typical gasoline car is actually going to be using less than 20%, fully considered, of the energy from the oil actually goes into motion. So this is when we see people doing calculations for what does it take to create a sustainable energy Earth, they assume that the same energy amount is required for an electrified civilization versus a combustion civilization. This is not true, because most of the energy of combustion is waste heat.
And even to get the fuel to combust in the first place and get it to the end use, there's a lot lost along the way. I mean, this is for the number of terawatt hours, terawatts, and trillions of investment at the bottom of the page. This is already actively occurring in front of us. 60% of the generation added to the US grid was solar in 2022. And actually, on a year-on-year basis, solar deployment is growing 50% year-on-year as of 2022. So this is a serious upswing, and if we continue this trend, this is going to be behind us before we even know it.
Yeah.
Second, switching to electric vehicles. Again, 21% reduction in fossil fuel use by doing this alone. Obviously, Tesla is heavily engaged in this activity, along with many others. Overall, EV production grew 59% year-on-year in 2022, and EVs hit an amazing 10% market share. I mean, it's an awesome milestone. I'm super excited to see that. I gotta. Yeah,
I mean, this is obviously happening very rapidly, and I mean, I think really all cars will go to fully electric and autonomous, and so riding a non-autonomous gasoline car is going to be analogous to riding a horse and using a flip phone. That's basically going to be the situation. And
we actually took a somewhat conservative assumption here in terms of how many batteries are required, because the more the fleet is autonomous, the smaller the fleet needs to be, just from a utility basis. So we're not accounting for all of those benefits, or really much of those benefits at all, in this number. And what does this fleet look like? Just rough view from our perspective. Of course, we could be wrong, but you can see the sort of breakdown of the fleet by millions of vehicles. Our goal is to do 20 million electric vehicles a year.
Yeah. Fewer vehicles will be needed, at least passenger vehicles, with autonomy. So there's some debate as to what that number is, but it's some number less than the number of vehicles needed today. There's roughly 2 billion cars and trucks in operation in the world today. And
yeah, so what we show here is actually, I think, only 1.4 million or so. So we're represent 1.4 billion, or so. So a smaller fleet, and the numbers here in this presentation are around 85 million vehicles a year produced, just to give you a sense of how we're thinking about this. Again, we're going to put all these assumptions up online and encourage people's thoughts.
Yeah. So we're basically heading rapidly towards an electric or autonomous future.
Exciting.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why EVs are so enabling is this end-use efficiency point. Tesla Model 3, it's 4 times more efficient from the well to wheel than a Toyota Corolla. And that's all about the efficiency of getting the electricity into the car in a sustainable energy economy, and then how efficient the car is in transferring that stored energy to motion on the road. When compared to the engine in the Toyota Corolla and all the extraction, refining, transmission, distribution of the gasoline to the Toyota Corolla. And just for, this is a fun reference, Model 3 can drive over a mile on the energy it takes to boil a pot of water for pasta, and then it can drive another mile on the energy it took to cook the pasta. And that pasta is 1 pound, and Model 3 is like 4,000 pounds. Just to give you a sense of just like, it really doesn't use a lot of energy to move a Model 3, that 4,000 pound object, down the road.
Yeah, also, heat is a lot more energy than motion.
Yeah. Yeah. But people, you just boil a pot of pasta, you don't even think about it. It's just interesting how efficient these cars are. Next, switching to heat pumps in homes, businesses, and industry. Right now, heat pumps meet 10% of building heating needs. Install rates growing 10% year on year. It really needs to accelerate. Heat pumps can serve, heat applications up to 200 C in businesses and industry. And from an investment perspective, as you can see on this page, this is actually the lowest hanging fruit in terms of displacing fossil fuels. You might be saying, well, what exactly is a heat pump? So heat pumps don't move heat, don't create heat, they move heat. When you think about the natural gas furnace in your house, it is generating heat itself, but what the heat pump is doing is actually moving heat from outside of your house into your house. They're just an air conditioner or a refrigerator in reverse. So we're surrounded by heat pumps. There's they're all over this factory. They're in your house. And all this really is about bringing them to displace all the fossil fuel heating in all of the homes, business, in the industry that we can. And from an end-use efficiency perspective, this is a three times.
About lithium. Lithium is extremely common. It's one of the most common elements on Earth. There's no country that has a monopoly on lithium,
Yep.
Or even close to it. There's enough lithium ore in the United States to electrify all of Earth. If the United States was the only place producing lithium, there's enough domestic material to electrify Earth. It's very common. The limiting factor is the refining of the lithium into battery-grade lithium hydroxide or lithium carbonate. That's the actual limiting factor.
And the same is true for these other materials.
Yes.
And this is, again, these are not crazy technologies. It's just the investments need to be made, and the investments, they're not gigantic. They just need to happen.
Right. Nickel is maybe of them all the trickiest one to solve. But as we showed with the graph there, maybe need 30% of the world's known nickel reserves. So
and the nickel reserves have actually grown since
yes,
2000. So.
There is more. Yeah, exactly. So, and you only need nickel for basically aircraft, long-range boats, and very long-range cars or trucks. But the vast majority of the heavy lifting for electrification will be iron-based cells. And iron is actually literally the most common element on Earth. So, a little trivia point, if you say what is Earth made of? By mass, it is made of iron more than anything else. And second, oxygen, and then everything else after that. So basically we're a muddy rust ball is what Earth is. So an iron cathode is you're definitely not going to run out of iron. There's so much iron, it's insane.
Goes wrong in final assembly, you block the whole line, and you end up with buffering in between. This is at the tail end of its manufacturing optimization. Henry Ford first invented this assembly line in 1922. It's been 100 years, and it's really hard to make a change after 100 years. And when you watch it happen, it's actually really silly to a guy like me. You take all these stamp panels, you put them together, then you put them in a framing station, you build a body that looks something like a car, you put the doors on, and then you paint them. Once you get the color, you take the doors off, and then you start putting the interior inside the car. It comes in through the openings that already exist. I wish it went in like this big piece like this, but there's actually people coming in and out of the car. There's awkward, movements. Then we lift the car up, we put stuff from underneath it, we put it down, then we put the seats in the car, and finally we close it all out with glass and we bring those doors that went away for a trip and we put them back in the car. Most of the time, we're doing this with a big, giant car and moving it and doing really nothing to it at all.
What's funny, though, in this kind of whole process is that just recently Toyota just called this an engineering work of art.
True.
The Model Y.
That was humbling, but at Tesla, it's not good enough. If we're going to scale the way we want to do, we have to rethink manufacturing again. As part of the master plan, we have to make another step change in cost. We started this on Model Y when we made these huge gigacastings, and we deleted hundreds of parts. We simplified assembly with the Model Y structural battery, where we decided the floor should be a part of the car. The battery is the floor. We put the seats and the interior on the battery, and we bring it up through a big open hole, and we assemble it. And this allowed us to do things in parallel, fully rethinking the process and reducing the final assembly line by about 10%. And we thought maybe we could do this other places.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, the constraints become part of the solution rather than a problem.
So when you think about what I'm trying to say, I really want to hammer this home. When you have a car that's about 5 meters long, and you have people working around it like we did in Model 3, and we change that to this process where we take different parts of the car, and we can do more at the same time, like we did with the Model Y structural battery pack. What you see here is us doing that on the front part of the vehicle, or the rear part of the vehicle. That means we can get more people working on the car, or robots, working on it at the same time. That means we have better operator density, less time doing nothing. I call that space-time efficiency. It has nothing to do with quantum mechanics. We can have that conversation later. But we get 44% more operator density, which means more work, less time walking back to the station, 30% improvement in space-time efficiency. And because we're not building it in and out of the car with those slow movements of those robots I showed you from production hell, when we go to automate it, it's going to be a lot easier. In the end, that will probably look something like this, where we balance parallel and series manufacturing in a way where we...
One more area where Tesla really excels because we integrate work that is often farmed out. So when you are making a new product, it's not enough to think about the product itself. You have to think about how you're going to make it at scale. So at Tesla, our powertrain and our powertrain manufacturing equipment is both designed under one roof. The engineers who are designing the motor, they are in the same room as the engineers who are designing the machine that's going to put that motor together. And that collaboration pushes us from day one to design products that are not only high performance, but are really easy to assemble. So, all of this expertise that we have in the powertrain team, in hardware, in software, in manufacturing, it's going to have a major impact on our next platform. In our next powertrain, so those silicon carbide transistors that I mentioned that are key component but expensive, we figured out a way to use 75% less without compromising the performance or the efficiency of the car. And of course, we know that battery cell supply is one of the constraints on the scalability of EVs right now. Our new powertrain is compatible with any battery chemistry. And that will give us great flexibility in battery sourcing. If we want to make EVs more accessible to people, they have to be cheaper. We've reduced the drive unit cost to about $1,000. And we don't think any other automaker is even close to that number. Finally, the bigger a factory is, the longer it takes to build. If we can build the same number of cars from a smaller factory, we are going to be able to scale EV production faster. Our next powertrain factory is 50% smaller than the one that's behind me today, even though it has the same capacity. All of these improvements, I think, are going to be transformative for the adoption of EVs and our ability to scale them. There's one more thing that I want to highlight. So I talked about how we had reduced the amount of rare
single connection, which wasn't possible in the past for debug. For the next-gen platform, we're looking to optimize the controller design across the entire car and across all of the organizations, not just for a given subsystem. Simplifying the wire harness will enable automation. 48 volts will allow us to reduce the size, mass, and cost of the low-voltage system. And it's one of the key things to enabling us to scale production of the low voltage systems for the master plan 3. David?
Cool. So I joined Tesla in 2012, and even in those very early days of the Model S, we already had the ability to update software over the air in all of the controllers throughout the entire vehicle, at a time when other cars were just starting to update software in only their infotainment units. And furthermore, we've had sophisticated, anonymized data logging and telemetry capabilities that allow us to understand how the fleet is doing, what customers are doing with it, and how it's responding in the field to that usage. These two capabilities combined, OTA updates and data insights, give us the ability to iterate quickly on our software and to maximize the amount that we learn and proceed and the progress that we make in every one of those iterations. We've used these capabilities to inform countless design decisions in both software and hardware.
Yeah, one example is that we were able to monitor and track the use of the sunroof in our cars and found that our customers never use their sunroof, so we made this easy decision to remove it.
Very barely, yeah. We haven't had sunroofs for a while. As another example, we are able to use our collision data to design our crash safety systems for what happens in the real world, far beyond what regulatory and behind the scenes in the form of platform-level functionality that we'll leverage later. But you've seen some of it surface already in terms of features that our customers and our internal operations teams can benefit from. Like in 2021, we built on top of our mobile app phone key and gave our customers the ability to share their car with anyone by sending them an invitation in a text message or an email. Last year, we introduced profile synchronization, which synchronizes your seat, steering, and mirror positions, as well as your settings, media favorites, and stored navigation locations across all vehicles in your account. Internally, we have an app that allows our personnel in engineering, manufacturing, delivery, and logistics to view, locate, and drive all Tesla-owned vehicles at their site. And when customers bring their car into service, when they receive a Tesla-owned service loaner vehicle, we are starting at some locations to automatically add that vehicle to the customer's mobile app account, so that combined with cloud-synchronized profiles and phone key, it's a completely seamless experience. As soon as the customer walks up to that loaner, it behaves and feels exactly like their own car. And all this is built on top of end-to-end encryption and cryptographically signed commands, so that customer data remains private and obscure, and the fleet only trusts commands from authorized parties. So that's a bit of a preview of all the pieces that we're building, looking ahead to our future of autonomous fleets. Synchronization, permissions management, security, and privacy. And that has been a whirlwind tour through some of the things that we're doing behind the scenes to enable the efficiency, cost reduction, and speed that we are going to need for our next phase of growth and for the next phase of the master plan. And so now, to tell us about the latest in full self-driving, I'd like to introduce Ashok.
For similar cases where the car had false braking due to some parked car. We added 14,000 videos to our training set. And then once we train the networks again with this new data, it now correctly understands that, OK, there is no driver in this car, hence it must be parked, so then there is no need to brake. And this is a systematic way to solve problems. On the chart on the right side, you can see that every time we add data, the performance improves. And then we can do this for every kind of task that we have in our system. And this is what we call as data engine. We identify challenging cases, such as the one you saw earlier. And there could be other different types of challenging cases too. We mine the fleet for such data, put it through our auto labeling system, and produce the labels, add it to the training set. And once we have the newly trained models, we deploy them to the fleet. If we rinse and repeat this process, everything gets better and better. The final critical piece is the compute. In order to train these large models in a reasonable amount of time, you need lots of compute. In addition, compute is also required to produce the labels automatically. This is just compute in our data centers. In addition, we also have high computers in the car, which can run up to like 150 teraops of compute. On the back end, we have a 14,000 GPU cluster, and roughly 30% is used for auto-labeling, and the remaining 70% is used for training. We also have a 30 petabyte of video cache, and this is growing to 200 petabytes. All of this is going to significantly increase once we bring Dojo, which is our training computer, on board into this. Just to give a reference, just the occupancy networks that you saw earlier use one.
It's kind of weird seeing the arms and legs just separate. We have a whole lab full of arms and legs. Worth bearing in mind that when we did AI Day, this version of Optimus didn't walk at all. So the rate of improvement here, I think, is quite significant. It's obviously not doing parkour, but it is walking around, and we have multiple copies, I suppose, of Optimus. The thing that I think Tesla brings to the table that others don't have is that we have the real-world AI. We're the most advanced in real-world AI. So the same AI that drives the car, which you can think of the car really as a robot on wheels, and this is a robot on legs. So as we solve real-world AI, and I don't think there's anyone even close to Tesla on solving real-world AI. That same computer and software goes into Optimus. So it's not that helpful to have a humanoid robot if you have to program every individual action. It needs to be able to walk around autonomously and solve tasks. You should be able to instruct it in simple things by showing visually what the robot needs to do, or just telling it what to do. So I think that's a key advantage that we have. And then we also are good at designing things for manufacturing and then manufacturing itself. So the actuators in Optimus are all custom designed Tesla actuators. So we designed the electric motor, the gearbox, the power electronics, obviously the battery pack, and everything else that goes into Optimus. We were quite surprised to find how little was available off the shelf, because there's a vast number of electric motors, gearboxes and whatnot that are available in the world, and we found none of them were useful in a humanoid robot, literally none. So you have to custom design the actuators for a humanoid robot. And so the same team that designed the groundbreaking electric motors that are in the Model S Plaid designed the actuators in the robot.
Vehicle routing or navigation system. Other electric vehicle manufacturers, well, some of them have vehicle side data. Other infrastructure providers have site data. But at Tesla, we have both. And what that allows us to do is to use Trip Planner to route vehicles towards available sites and away from congested sites so we can balance our utilization without risking wait time. And the results speak for themselves. Over the last few years, we've been able to drive up site utilization by 30%. That means lower per kilowatt hour cost, while also cutting our wait time in half. And we think this can get even better. Today, we're feeding Trip Planner with real-time site information and information about vehicles currently at sites. Going forward, we'll be moving that to projecting site occupancy based on the understanding of what vehicles are currently routing to those sites. And ultimately, our vision for Trip Planner is that it's the air traffic controller for electric vehicle charging across all infrastructure on a global basis. And the last thing we focused on to get here is quicker charge times. We're really proud of what we've been able to accomplish here. We've shaved off 30% of our charge time, average supercharging site time, visit time, over the last few years. This has taken improvements on the hardware side, with our software, on our vehicles, and on our infrastructure, and we're really excited to continue pushing this trend down. Looking forward, the job does not get any easier. As you heard earlier, we aspire to a fully electrified global fleet. That fleet, from an industry standpoint, needs 9 petawatt hours of charging on an annual basis. And while Tesla charging certainly doesn't have to supply all of that, it does require that, for our part, we have a few new focuses in order to scale. First, if you want a fully electrified global fleet, all of those vehicles have to have a great and reliable charging experience. So, as many of you know, recently we have started opening up our networks on a global basis. Over 50% of our superchargers in Europe are currently open to other electric vehicles. We've also opened up in Asia Pacific with our first sites in Australia. And just yesterday, we opened our first 10 supercharger sites here in North America and the US to other electric vehicles. We've also invested a lot to be able to make this a really easy experience for our new customers. All you have to do is sign into our Tesla app to unlock a post and start charging. We've also, on physical site changes, we've also added hardware to our sites. They're called Magic Docks. And basically, that is installed in areas where we have different charging standards, and they allow for other electric vehicles to come to our site without having to bring their own adapters or hardware. We've also just started installing our 4th generation supercharger posts. Those are being installed in Europe first. And while it's not a big mention, not a big thing to mention, they do have longer charging cables so that we can more easily reach the charge ports of different vehicles. The second
times
of a project to ultimately provide a solution that is thoughtful, intuitive, provides great value to our customers, and is as plug and play as possible. And yeah, just looking at these projects, it's incredible to see them all come together in one montage.
Seeing the future.
Yeah.
Compressed.
It's 10 years of building these projects, and it's incredible to see the impact and to see what we have in front of us.
Absolutely.
We're on our 6th generation of our industrial product, which is the Megapack XL that we're building out of Lathrop, California. We've deployed over 16 gigawatt hours of industrial and residential products across 50 countries. And really, Megapack is a market leader. It's best in class in efficiency, reliability, energy density, and easiest to install, lowest cost to install.
And we call it XL because it is actually the largest, heaviest object that you can, and that 70% of South Australia's energy in 2022. That compares to 30% in Texas and 35% in California. But this is an indication of where this is all headed, of both centralized and distributed storage resources providing the key to unlocking fully renewable grids. And Tesla Electric is the retail plan that we're using to bring that to bear for our customers that have our products. And this is how we're rolling it out. First, as it exists, it's available in Texas for people who have power walls in their homes. But we need to extend beyond that. Over 1 billion people live in markets with competitive retail electricity. And there's over $2 trillion in annual energy spend in these markets. This is a huge opportunity. And our intention is to bring this to market by market in the same way that we've approached Tesla Insurance, where we can bring value to our customers to reduce their total cost of ownership of our products. So actually what we're going to do next, and this is pretty exciting here in Texas, by this summer, we're going to offer a retail electricity plan to people who have our cars where they can have unlimited overnight home charging for $30 a month. This is part of reducing the total cost of ownership of our vehicles. And the reason why we can do this is because Texas has a ton of wind. And in Texas, the wind blows at night. So actually serving these customers with electricity at night for their cars is the best thing to do for everyone. And so this is a way to incentivize people to charge at home at night directly from renewable power. It's part of the grand master plan we talked about at the beginning. So we're very excited about this. And we do see this similar to Tesla Insurance.